Well, we've had a lot of new applicants, probably within the past 2 to 3 years. And the reason being is because Howie is now running the AARP tax program. So like I said earlier, there are a lot of people that have lived in this community for years. When I ask them how long they've been a resident, they'll say 23 years, but they've, for a veteran's tax credit, and they've just never applied. So the elderly exemption, it is getting out there more so, and that's why I'm here tonight as well. But with Howie and Teresa doing the AARP tax credit, they've been informing people over the past few years, so we have had, more apply. I don't have the numbers with me, but if you stop by the office tomorrow, I can tell you how many we have in each category. The categories are set up as follows. If you do qualify, and you fall within the age category of 65 to 75, you get $46,000 off of your assessed value, which currently calculates at to $551 in taxes a year that you're saving. If you fall between 75 and 80 years old, it's reducing your property assessment by $62,000, multiplied by the current tax rate would be $742. And if you're over 80, that would reduce your assessment by $77,000, and that is the maximum, anybody over 80. And that calculates to $922 a year off of your tax bill. So if you know of anybody in your, in your area or in your neighborhood that's really struggling in this tough economy, please do pass the word along. And once again, my name's Cindy. Just have them stop by the office. If they can't get to the office, just drop a phone call to me and I can get some applications out in the mail to these people.
Sure.
Is there a limit on how much you're allowed? Like persons for the town?
Well, it's a household. So like if you're married, it's a combined income.
Right.
But there's no limit. I mean, if there's 40 families over 80 and they meet the qualifications, then they would all qualify. There's no limitation. As long as they meet the criteria, they would qualify.
You were just talking about the AARP thing. Explain that, what that is.
It's taxes for low and moderate income, free tax help.
So people that have low income can get
Low or
their taxes done for
free.
free.
Yeah. And Teresa helped me until she got this new job. Now she don't help me anymore. I'm saying why. But we did notice, as when Teresa and I were doing it, that there are a lot of elderly people that were struggling that could use the help of $500. Made a big difference to them. And working with Cindy, we had to update our values and update the income and update the asset level. There's a lot of changes that need to be done. So working with Cindy, we get it done, and it's helped a lot of people. And I get thanked when I do their taxes because they're able to stay in their home, which they might not be able to.
Sounds like a great program. Anybody else? Very good.
So I'm going to ask Howie to speak on the low and moderate income. I'm not sure if anyone's currently qualifying for that program, but just a notation before Howie does speak. This is a state-run program, and in the past, the state, if you did qualify, let's say last year, you would automatically get that application sent to you the following year. But that is no longer happening. Obviously, the state's having cutbacks as well, so they're trying to save on postage and whatnot. So if you have qualified for that in the past, you will no longer be automatically receiving those forms. You'll have to either download them online, or Kathy Kinville in the tax collector's office always has a substantial amount of forms.
Yeah, basically what it is if you look at your property tax bill, you'll see various segments, and one of those segments is the state education tax rate, which I believe ours is like $2.47, or somewhere in that range. If your income, married, filing jointly, was $40,000 or less, you qualify. If you're single with $20,000, you qualify. That's the only test, other than being a resident for a year. And what it does is it gives you a portion of that $2.47 of your bill back to you. It has to be, they're very stringent on the time for the filing. It has to be filed by June 30th at the deadline. If you send it later, they throw them out. Again, we're very fortunate that through Arlene, we use Service Link to come down and help people fill them out. We've helped them fill out before. So if you know anybody that may not even have to, this is especially true, if they don't have to file income tax and they own a home, they qualify. So make sure that people know that, because they may not know that they really qualify.
Doesn't it start at a certain time too? Like you can't.
You can't send it in until May.
I think it starts May
15th?
1st.
May 1st
through June 30th.
through June 30th. They're very stringent on those timeframes. So it's another way to help those that might be really tight. And there is no age requirement. We're not talking elderly, we're just low and moderate income. So help, if you know somebody that may be in that situation, they may have questions, have them give me a call. I can help, or Arlene, or Cindy, or Teresa, or anybody.
We have your number, Howie.
I know you got my number. And again, we did notice that when we were doing the taxes for AARP. So.
Very good. Some more questions for Cindy?
Yeah, I
Go
got a
ahead.
question, not for Cindy, for Howie.
Okay, go ahead.
All right.
Who the hell doesn't have to file an income tax?
Well, I had.
How many here don't have to file an income tax? Put your hand up.
I had 2 people today that didn't have to file.
How do you get into that bracket? I want it.
You want it? So you want to have income less than $19,000?
I'll work it out on paper.
Well, that I knew you could do, Al. I'm surprised you file anyway.
Quiet, I'm not Al Capone.
Want to talk about budgets?
Yep, budget time.
Everybody's favorite subject, budgets. I will tell you that since I've been on the budget committee, both the selectmen's group and the department heads and administration, school board and the administration have done an incredible job recognizing the needs of the people. Does that mean they're not going to ask for increases? No. But they've done a good job to the point where, in speaking to what Charlie was talking about, what Teresa was talking about, we may have gone too far in some areas in terms of infrastructure and maybe not taking care of as much as we need to. This year's budget for the town, when I say budget, I'm talking about the total appropriation. That includes all the capital reserve funds and the operating budget, is less than 1% increase over last year. And for those of you that are at the deliberative session last year, I made a comment that last year's budget was the lowest budget in 7 years that the town has had. And yet we're still getting great service from the great people that work here. However, at some point in time, we're going to have to pay the piper. So, and I agree with what Charlie was talking about, is that we did a capital improvements plan this year for capital plans for the planning board. That covered school board, town, major purchases, over $25,000 in expense, with a life expectancy of over 15 years. And laid out for the planning board, the selectmen, and the school board, how that would be funded. Would it come out of a budget? Would it be a capital reserve? Or would it be a bond? It's a planning document. Something the town needed badly. We've had one. We've had parts of one. The police chief, the fire chief has done an excellent job all over the years of planning out when they think they're gonna need a piece of equipment. Then they said, okay, go to the selectmen and say, we need a capital reserve amount over this 5-year period of 20,000, because we're gonna have to spend 100,000 in 5 years. It's worked out well. Worked out real well. Because you gotta remember, the capital reserve fund can't be used for anything other than what the voters approve. 5 years down the road, if somebody says, oh, we got $350,000 in the town transfer station closure fund, I think the selectmen said we ought to buy a big desk for the selectmen. Can't do that. It's dedicated just to that function. So, we've got a plan now in place that was finished and presented last week to the planning board. The selectmen actually used it as part of the budget process this year. We will continue to do that, to continue to update that. Now we've got to address items that fell outside that, such as the roads. The selectmen found a big savings for the taxpayers this year. And as all you have to do is look at the paper to see the biggest expense for most towns is health insurance. And they've got a substantial savings on the plan they found. And I'll say the same thing I said at the budget meeting. Are we sure it's not gonna hurt our employees? We're comfortable? And they are. Time will see. The school budget is also only a 1% increase, just about 1% increase. So I think we've done a good job. We gotta continue with the capital reserve funds because the capital reserve funds even out the tax rate. And you gotta remember that when we pass a budget for $4.8 million for the town, that is not what you're gonna get assessed, $4.8 million. Because we have income coming from other sources, i.e. car registrations is a big one. I mean, it used to be at one point in time, I think Teresa, it was about $700,000 at one point. Now, last year was 500, so. Six.
Yeah.
So, we got revenue. So it's actually about half of that, maybe a little more than half that actually gets passed on it when we go to set the tax rate. Because we have revenues coming from other sources. Same with the school. The school you look at, you say it's a $10 million budget. Yeah, it is. But you gotta remember, we get over $2.4 million from the state. That state education tax I told you about on the property bill, we get $2.4 million back on that to help pay for our school. So there are incomes from other areas. Now, that's a double-edged sword. It's all great, extra money. Last year, it killed our tax rate. Our tax rate went up in the town 28 cents because of the lack of outside income. We were $470,000 short of where we were the year before in other income. So the expenses were actually $24,000 under budget, but because the outside revenue didn't come in, our rate had to go up. We still have one of the lowest rates around. Now, those of us that live on the lake know why. 75% of the tax rate comes from R2, the lake people. And that's the way it should be. I knew that when I moved on it. But remember, we only about a third of the people are year-round that live on these lakes. At least on Powder River Pond, it's about 2/3 that are non-residents. So that means we're getting a lot of revenue from non-residents, which is keeping our tax rate down. Again, I think everybody did a good job. Can you argue line by line that why do we do this, why do we do that? Yeah. But you have to make up priorities, and you make your priorities based on what the town administrator, the selectmen, the department heads say we need. But I think overall they do a good job. And we had some good discussion with the budget committee. So those of you that watched the PEG channel, you saw that we had some good discussions this year on the budget. I'll entertain any questions.
Probably totally off the track, but there've been a lot of comments about going back to the town meeting as opposed to how we have deliberative sessions now. How was that so different? It's been long enough since a town meeting for me, and I can't remember except long hours.
Oh, I never was in a town meeting. I mean, I never lived here during that time.
Were you anywhere where there was a town meeting?
No, Illinois was all by vote.
I just wonder what the difference would be as far as the making decision process.
Well, definitely more long hours, definitely like you remember.
Yeah.
Well, back when we had the town meeting, let me back up. When you would vote in March, you would be voting on only zoning ordinances and elected officials. And then the 4 days later, you would have the town meeting, which would then vote on all these articles that you're able to go to the polls now and, be an informed voter and vote then. As far as the budget process, I believe that all still was the same. We still met with department heads, you still had budget committee, you still had all these people to pull all the numbers together. It was just more of a discussion at town meeting and the vote at town meeting. So then anything to be amended happened then, and it would be voted right on the floor. And I haven't heard recently that we were trying to go back to traditional town meeting. I know when we first became an SB2 town in '96, that for a couple years it was no, we don't want this. But now, the time frame for deliberative session is very tight, which is hard on everybody. We're all cramming, right on Christmas time and getting all that stuff ready. With town meeting, you actually have a little bit of longer time. People that are still town meeting are just getting into completing their budgets now, just getting into their budget hearings, so they have a little bit of longer time to get ready for their budget processes. But, there was only about 70 people at deliberative session, which is very unfortunate. Thankfully, we do have the PEG channel to, make people more aware. The newspaper, we put the stuff on the website, hoping that people are going to be looking at all this. But, and at traditional town meeting, you'd have maybe, 300-400 people show up, I think, in the old days.
Which we couldn't do in the town
No.
hall
We couldn't do
now.
it now. No, we couldn't do that.
And I guess
You'd have
part
to
of
have
my
it at the
question
school.
was, how can we justify, for the few people who I've heard mention, we should go back to that, that keeps some people from, having their right to vote because they're limited by the number of people that could be at the
Yeah.
town hall.
I think for a long time when it first happened, it was such a shock to everybody that had traditional town meeting. We all did that. Those Saturday nights at 7:00, that it was a big night out and it was a big thing. But I think as times have changed and people's ways have changed and the internet and all that kind of stuff, I don't know. I will always love traditional town meeting, but I think you can have more informed voters as long as they take their time to be informed and make the right call when they're going to vote. It gives everybody the right to vote on every article. But you're still talking, even when they go to the polls, you only have about, I think last year we had a 16% turnout, which is still really low. And those are probably the same people that would have gone to traditional town meeting. So, but now they get to do it in private and, they get to be more informed and look into the situations ahead of time, so.
But you gotta remember, 70 people out of 5,000 people run this town. Because at that deliberate session, they can change anything that's there. So 70 people make the decisions for all you people that didn't show.
Can't change it at the deliberative session like you used to.
No,
can
but it should
amend
be
it.
voted
You can
on.
amend it.
It
You can
can
amend it.
amend, everything gets amended. Once it
Yeah.
goes beyond that deliberate session, it's over. You can't say anything. And that's the part that I don't understand as someone that's trying to participate into this, that 70 people out of 5,000 were there.
500 voters.
And I'm not saying that we all don't have things to do, but we can't sit here and not say that these people did a good job, because we weren't there. There was 70 people there that made decisions that should have been made by 5,000.
I'll tell you something even, to me, more disturbing, being chairman of the budget committee, is you go to a public hearing where we're trying to help people understand what's in the budget, and we have 3 people. And we had 4 people at the school, 4 people at the school. I mean, that's where we're supposed to impart information.
And one of the concerns that I've had over the years is the difference between the town and the school. I mean, we all pay the taxes. The school budget is at least twice as much as the town, all right? And nobody goes,
Yeah.
all right? And it's, it astounds me that, well, I don't go to the school board meeting, the school's meetings, because I don't have any kids in school.
Right.
Well, that's great, but you still pay the taxes as anybody does. And, if you don't show up at the school meetings, you're missing a lot, especially the deliberative session,
Yeah.
okay?
Sandy?
Teresa, I had 2 ladies in for breakfast this morning, and they didn't know anything about that meeting on Saturday night. So I said it was in the paper, so how, if everybody's gonna have that same answer, how do you get the word out?
Post office too.
I know there was a sign on
we
the-
do post it in all
at
the
the
post
rec.
offices, in the town hall,
Outside the
put it
rec.
on the on the Rex board, website, newspaper. I mean, without having to do a mass mailing to everybody, which is very costly. I mean, if
Sure.
that's what people want, we could certainly do that, but that's, where a lot of the costs come up in the time for the employees to do that. I don't know where else, if anybody has any ideas, I would love to hear them, because I don't know where else.
Email.
A mass emailed
Mass
everybody?
These
There
were
is-
older
there's-
ladies, I don't know if they have a computer.
Well, this is the
Well-
thing, the older generation is a little harder to hit when,
Gentleman in the back.
That's,
Okay, just so you all know, I'm not a resident of Wakefield, but I am a taxpayer. And I'm here tonight to gather some information, some of which I've gotten through email from the Pine River Pond Association. My family, a place on Pine River Pond with frontage. And, you know, I hear things tonight that certainly is clear in my mind with what's happened
let me get you something to drink.
insofar as we're concerned. I mean, we've been taxpayers for 6 years. As was indicated, I think a few minutes ago, it was asserted that last year was the smallest increase in budget that had been experienced in the last 5 or 6 years. And in the first 5 years that I was here, we had a very small increase in our annual tax bill. Last year's tax bill was more than a surprise. I only live down in Rochester, so I have a pretty good idea when you're having a town meeting and what, and maybe there's shame on me for not coming up even though I couldn't vote and seeing what's going on. But we had a more than 13% increase in our tax bill. I understand that the town apparently last year took the Pine River Pond area and did an actual measurement and did a reassessment of that portion of town. But I got a couple of questions as to what was done with everybody else, because in addition to being taxpayer here, and I don't want to, I don't want to say this to say anything other than I'm a lawyer. I've represented the city of Rochester for 26 years. I have a little bit of an understanding about assessing and how it's done, and have had a fair amount of experience with that type of thing. And it's hard for me to understand. My understanding is that the per frontage foot value was increased last year for lakefront property from $2,200 to $2,600. That's an over 18% increase in the value of land having frontage on the lake. I don't know how that can be justified by actual sales data, because part of my business has a lot to do with real estate work, and I don't know of any place in the southeastern New Hampshire that had an 18% increase in land values. So I guess my concern is, and I know there's a movement to file a bunch for people with lakefront property, at least in the Pine River Pond area, to file abatement requests. And say to you, I don't know where I stand on that issue, because I have no desire to seek an abatement if it's not justified. On the other hand, if it is justified, then my feeling would be to do it. The idea of assessments is so that everybody pays their fair, just, and proportional share of the common tax burden. And my question is, how was the information apparently that justifies an 18% or 15% or whatever it works out with a particular property, certainly over, well over 10% for almost every property?
I'm gonna answer that right now though, okay?
Well, let me just finish the question. How was that projected to the remaining 80%?
Well, I'm gonna answer it anyway.
Okay,
because
well, I didn't know that
we-
because I hadn't asked a question yet.
I know,
so-
but I'm gonna answer it this way. That question is a great question, and I'm sure nobody has any problem with answering it. But at this meeting, it's off the subject of what we're here for. And what I would like is that you go into the office and see Cindy Bickford during her business hours.
See, I got business hours too.
I understand,
And
but that's.
I came up here tonight specifically because it was held out that people would be here from the town government, budget committee, whatnot, to answer questions. I don't think it's a difficult question.
I just don't think I don't think it's gonna be answered.
Well, wait a
so-
minute. Well, if it isn't gonna be answered, it's because you choose not
That's
to
right,
answer it.
exactly.
But to say, sir, that it's not part of the topic when you've spent time telling people about the budget, about the increases, about how difficult it is to raise the monies, and then to say to people who are paying those, that I'm not willing to tell you how it is that you, when you had an increase, and I don't know what the increase in the rate was, but it was under $1, which would mean that it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 4 or 5%. Yet a segment of the town is saddled with a I'm going to say approximately 15% increase. You wonder how that could be proportionately done. And yet, most of the municipalities have a tax increase that's only in the 4 or 5% range. So you don't have to answer the question. I'm not here to compel you to. But I think that it's unfair and inappropriate to represent that it's off topic when we're talking about budgets and taxes. And so, that's all I got to say.
I don't think that anybody wouldn't like to actually answer you. I just don't think that that particular subject is a little bigger than what we want to deal with, what I want to deal with at this meeting. But I do have the number to Cindy's office, that you don't have to come here, and you can make that call privately,
Okay.
okay? And this is just what I stood out for at the beginning.
I hear what you're saying, and
Because it could go from
it's your
one extreme to another.
No, it's your meeting. I'm not gonna.
But if you call her privately, I'm sure she'll answer any of your questions, and you can take it from there.
Okay, I thank you for that.
Howard,
Yeah,
the capital improvement plan,
right.
are we gonna bond those out, or are we gonna put money aside so, we
Well-
don't need to bond them out?
Well, let me put it this way, when we talk about capital improvement plan, it is strictly that, it's a plan, okay? And like I mentioned, we identified some projects that we as a committee felt bonding was more appropriate than going either with the operational budget, annual budget, or setting up a cap reserve. So that those things like the big projects, like renovating the town hall or whatever, we put those out in the 2015 timeframe to give people a chance to talk about doing a bond. We also have a couple of bonds coming up, one coming up from the school that will be finishing off. So you gotta remember it's a plan, and if you take a look at the CIP itself, on page 1 or 2, there is an underline that the CIP does not supplant or take the place of the normal budgeting process. That means it'll still go through the selectmen, the school board, the budget committee, the voters. It's just a plan of what could happen and give people a chance to think about it. And we really felt it's been so long since we've had a bond for the town. The last one for the town was for the water precinct. That was sewer, So we need to educate people of how a bond works. It also takes 2/3, 60% approval rate to even get it bonded.
But Howie, everyone other than Washington has seen what happens when you keep borrowing money, keep borrowing money, keep borrowing money. Borrowing money is not
I don't disagree, except for big projects. You're not gonna do $1 million project on an operating budget.